Hola a todo el mundo y bienvenido a mi canal. Yo me llamo Sharay. Soy una abogada afro-latina licenciada y practicando las leyes criminales, pero como todos ustedes, a mí me fascina cuando estamos hablando de casos de crímenes reales. En este video vamos a seguir hablando de Sean Diddy Combs. Si quieren más video en español, nada más dime allá abajo. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Desiree. I'm a licensed and practicing Afro-Latina criminal attorney who, much like the rest of you, has a severe fascination with true crime cases. Listen, today we're going to continue in our third part of our multi-part saga of the man, the myth, the mogul, the legend, the entertainer extraordinaire, Sean Diddy Combs. Last time we discussed Sean Diddy Combs, we left off with what happened in the first week of his trial. This time we're going to continue into the full second week about everything that happened in Sean Diddy Combs' trial. Let's get started. The second week of Diddy's trial began with the sixth day on Monday, May 19th of 2025. We started this day with Dawn continuing her testimony. If you guys will remember, last Friday, defense had some pretty big problems with Dawn being on the witness stand. Regardless, the court ruled that Dawn may continue her testimony, and that's why we started this Monday. I said it in the last video, but just in case this that's relevant to you guys as it is to me, AUSA Mitzi Steiner was doing Dawn's direct examination. Dawn testified that she saw Diddy being abusive towards Cassie frequently. Dawn stated Diddy would punch, choke, drag, and slap Cassie in the mouth. She testified that she saw Diddy punch Cassie in the stomach. Dawn stated the violence was sporadic and she did not know where it stemmed from. Dawn stated she saw injuries at different times on Cassie's face, arms, and legs, which Cassie attempted to cover with clothes, makeup, and sunglasses. Dawn stated some members of Diddy's staff also witnessed him abusing Cassie, but they wouldn't react or do anything. Jurors were then shown photos of Cassie with sunglasses, and Dawn stated it was after Diddy punched her in the face. Jurors also saw photos of Cassie, Dawn, and another former bandmate named Kaleena Harper, and all three of them were wearing sunglasses. When asked about the photo, Dawn stated her and Kaleena did that to have solidarity, be a friend, and to be a support system for someone who needed it. Dawn testified about another incident where Diddy punched Cassie in the stomach at a restaurant while several people from his record label were present. Dawn stated after leaving the restaurant, the argument between Cassie and Diddy continued in the car. Dawn stated Diddy grabbed Cassie by the neck and popped and slapped her in the mouth while telling her to shut up. Dawn stated she told Cassie to leave but was later threatened by Diddy and stopped commenting for her own safety. Dawn further stated she often saw Diddy taking drugs and carrying a gun. Before we get into Dawn's cross-examination, let me just give you some of my thoughts about her direct. I think just basically speaking, Dawn's direct examination kind of goes across the lines that the government's trying to establish here. The government's just trying to build Cassie's credibility by any means necessary. I think Dawn did that in saying that she saw Diddy abuse Cassie on multiple different occasions. One thing I will tell you I did not like that the government did not do during Dawn's direct examination was ask her about her civil suit. Dawn currently has a civil suit that's pending against Diddy. It looks like she filed it in 2024 after Cassie got her settlement payment. I think it looks a little shisty for the government not to bring it up, at least mention it to the jurors. Not at all, not to say anything at all, just looks a little crazy to me. And I think that's because if the defense were to bring it up, it looks like the government's hiding something, and that's not what you want to do in front of a jury. Dawn's cross-examination was handled by Diddy's attorney, Nicole Westmoreland. What did I just say? What happens if defense brings up the civil suit before the government did? And that is exactly what Miss Westmoreland did. She asked Dawn about her pending civil suit against Diddy. I mean, I don't know. Maybe the jurors don't see it the same way I do, but I think it looks a little bad on behalf of the government to not have brought it up first. In addition to bringing up her civil suit, defense heavily questioned Dawn about her recollection of the incident with the egg in the skillet. According to defense, although Dawn has mentioned it a few times before, her storytelling has changed multiple times. Also, specifically of note, defense brought out the fact that Dawn sent Diddy a demand letter in 2024, and the demand letter said that Dawn had merely heard a noise during the skillet incident, but Dawn testified that she witnessed it. That's not good. When asked about the discrepancy between her demand letter and her direct testimony, Dawn stated that she had no idea what her lawyer put in that demand letter. Defense went over each and every recorded statement, and by recorded, I mean written, recorded in some other way of reports, anything like that. They went over absolutely each and every statement that Dawn had made. And she didn't even mention anything about the people go missing statement until a week before she took the stand on May 10th of 2025. Defense also went over some parts of Dawn's civil suit where she said she witnessed Diddy pull Cassie out of a car, and then she stated that actually didn't happen. When asked about that, Dawn stated it must have been a misquote from her lawyer. Defense also questioned Dawn about the fact that she reached out in 2020 to work with Diddy, despite all of these allegations occurring before then, and her claiming to be in such fear of this man. Dawn ultimately had to confess that she indeed did do that, and I don't think that was any good. By all accounts of every single person that I've seen report on this trial, everyone said that Nicole Westmoreland did a phenomenal job of cross-examining Dawn. And just by the written statements that I'm going over with you, I would agree. Nicole brought out each and every inconsistency that Dawn made, and she did it methodically, one by one by one by one. I'm sure Dawn was uncomfortable on that witness stand. Instead of Nicole just bringing it out as one lump sum, oh, you never said that to the prosecution, right? She went over each time. You never said it during this date. You didn't say it during this date. You further didn't say it during this date. And I think that's an effective cross-examination strategy. So kudos to Diddy's defense team on that one. Following Dawn's testimony, the government called witness number 6, Kerry Morgan, Cassie's former best friend. The direct examination of Kerry Morgan was done by AUSA Meredith Foster. During direct examination, Kerry testified that she and Cassie were best friends for 17 years, between 2001 and 2018. Kerry further testified that she does not currently speak to Cassie, nor does she speak to Diddy. Kerry testified that she stopped being friends with Cassie in 2018 after Diddy assaulted her. Kerry stated she did not want to be there, as in testifying, but she was subpoenaed to testify, so she had to present herself. When asked why she didn't want to testify, Kerry said, "I have moved on with my life, away from all these people and problems." Kerry stated she and Cassie started living together in 2004 in New York City. Kerry stated in the first few years of their friendship, Cassie didn't drink or use drugs much. Kerry stated Diddy was very nice, extremely generous, but also sort of intimidating and had a strong presence. Kerry said as she got to know him, she learned that Diddy had mood swings and would become aggressive and yell at Cassie. Kerry said that Diddy critiqued Cassie's appearance and Cassie lost confidence as her relationship with Diddy progressed. Kerry said she witnessed Diddy assault Cassie on 2 occasions, and on both occasions he was sober. Kerry said that on one occasion, Diddy pushed and hit Cassie in his LA home. Kerry said one of Diddy's security guards was present, and when Kerry asked him to intervene, the security guard stated he wasn't going to do anything. Kerry also stated that Diddy assaulted Cassie in Jamaica around 2013. Kerry stated she heard Cassie screaming, so she ran into the hallway where she was. Kerry said Diddy dragged Cassie by her hair down the hall for about 10 feet before Cassie ultimately ran to get her purse. Kerry stated Cassie ran barefoot into a wooded area, and both Diddy and Kerry went to look for her. Kerry stated that she ultimately found Cassie and the pair hid in a ditch for what felt like hours, before eventually going back to the house. Kerry stated there were a few more times where Diddy was violent, but these 2 incidents are the ones she recalls best. In reference to the aftermath of the March 2016 incident that was captured on surveillance footage, Kerry stated that Cassie went home with a black eye, and about 30 minutes after her arrival, Diddy was banging on the door with a hammer. Kerry stated that Cassie just sat on the couch, and she actually didn't think that Cassie cared if Diddy came in and killed her. Kerry stated police arrived later, but she wasn't aware of who called them. Kerry stated that Cassie wouldn't cooperate with police, so they ultimately left. Kerry said she did not call police when Diddy was violent because Cassie did not want her to. Kerry stated that Cassie couldn't leave because Diddy controlled everything. In relation to Diddy attacking her, Kerry stated Diddy let himself in while Cassie was in the bathroom. She stated, He came up behind me and choked me and then boomeranged a wooden hanger at my head and added that she had finger marks on her neck. After the incident, Kerry stated that Cassie asked her to sign an NDA in exchange for $30,000. Kerry stated she barely read the non-disclosure agreement and Cassie got the money from Diddy and then gave it to Kerry at a pizza shop. Before we get into Kerry's cross-examination, let me just give you my thoughts on her direct. Just generally speaking, Kerry comes across to me as a pretty neutral witness for both sides. And the reason I say that is because Kerry got up there and was like, I don't want to be here, okay? I'm here because you guys called me to testify, and I'm here because I don't want to get in trouble. But I don't want to be here. I've moved on from these people. I've moved on from this life, and I don't want to provide any testimony. I think that Kerry has no dog in this fight. She said she hasn't spoken to Cassie or Diddy in a very long time. The direct examination of Kerry was really good. It was succinct and it got out a lot of good details for the prosecution. But let's just see what happens on cross-examination. Kerry's cross-examination was handled by Diddy's lead defense attorney, Marc Agnifilo. During cross-examination, Kerry testified that Cassie was jealous of Kim Porter because Cassie could never go to the New Year's Eve parties with Diddy. Kerry testified that Diddy was jealous when Cassie started talking to Michael B. Jordan. Kerry testified that she visited Cassie while Cassie was shooting a movie in South Africa, and one of Diddy's assistants named Mia was present. Quick side note, it's my understanding that this person is actually not named Mia, but they're giving her the pseudonym of Mia because they don't want her to be publicly identified. Kerry also testified that Cassie was jealous of one of Diddy's other girlfriends, a woman named Gina. Kerry testified that before Diddy attacked her in 2018, he asked her who Cassie was cheating on him with. I don't think defense made any headway in that cross-examination. There weren't really any facts the defense got to that weren't already stated in the testimony that the jurors have heard up until this point. Cassie told the jurors herself she was jealous. Cassie told the jurors about the people she was jealous of. I mean, I don't know. I don't really think they really got anywhere, but you can let me know in the comment section if you disagree. Following Kerry's testimony, the government called their seventh witness, one of Diddy's former personal assistants, a man by the name of David James. The direct examination of David was done by AUSA Christy Slavik. David testified that he worked for Diddy from 2007 to 2009, so approximately 2 years. David testified he was excited to work for Diddy, and he admitted that he liked him. David stated he first met Cassie on a yacht in Miami. David said he didn't speak to Cassie frequently, but he remembers 2 conversations with her. David said during one conversation, Cassie mentioned this lifestyle was a little crazy. David said when he suggested that Cassie leave, she said that she couldn't get out. Trial day 6 wrapped up with David testifying, and his testimony was to resume on trial day 7. The 7th day of Diddy's trial did continue on Tuesday, May 20th of 2025. When he resumed the stand, David further stated that he was on a computer at Diddy's house one night when Diddy and Cassie were out with another assistant. David said when Diddy returned, Diddy said that someone had written a post lying about him hitting Cassie and wanted to know if David had written it. David testified that he did not write the post. David stated that he stalked Diddy's hotel rooms for him in addition to stalking a medicine bag. David said that Diddy had a drug dealer who was named One Stop. David said that Diddy often took Percocets and preferred taking ecstasy at night. David also mentioned that Diddy was taking Obama-shaped ecstasy pills, which I'll just add that and leave it there. David said he would often bring the drugs to Diddy and his friends. David said Diddy made him take a lie detector test on 2 occasions. David said on both occasions it was because things had went missing from Diddy's home. David said the experiences were very intimidating, but ultimately he passed the lie detector tests. Although I think David seemed like a relatively reliable witness, I will say that I think that some of his testimony implicated himself in some of Diddy's criminal activities. Him telling the jurors that he brought Diddy drugs and he brought Diddy's friends drugs was interesting. Obviously, you get on the stand and you're supposed to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But the prosecution didn't address whether or not David got immunity. And if they did address that, that's not something I heard about. So I'm assuming he maybe got some sort of use immunity to testify. And I've told you guys before, but use immunity is just immunity that says, if we decide to prosecute you in a further case, we're not going to use anything that you use and testify to here in the prosecution of you. So it's not complete immunity. It's just use immunity. Let's see if Diddy's defense team makes any headway on the cross-examination of David, however. David's cross-examination was again conducted by Diddy's lead defense attorney, Marc Agnifilo. David testified there was one occasion when he went with Diddy's security guard to a diner to get food for Diddy and the staff. David testified that when they arrived, the security guard saw Suge Knight inside and approached him. David said that he and the security guard then got the food, went back to Diddy's home, and noticed Diddy and Cassie outside arguing. David then stated that Diddy ordered David to drive Diddy to the diner to confront Suge Knight. David said Diddy had 3 handguns in his lap, but Suge was gone when they got back to the diner. David said he was shook up after the incident and gave his notice quickly thereafter. David said he offered to stay 6 more months to train a replacement, but ultimately left in May of 2009. When defense tried to discredit David's recollection about the Suge Knight incident through documents and statements that he made in prior interviews, David merely responded those looked like inaccurate notes. When defense asked David if he spoke up at any time during the diner incident, David said, quote, "Respectfully, sir, you have someone with 3 guns in this close proximity. I didn't think I had the option to say something." After discussing his admiration for Diddy, David was asked if Diddy tended to be gracious in situations with his fans. David merely responded, "Gracious is not a word I think I would use to describe Mr. Combs." David further stated that Diddy really didn't sign anything for his fans, but instead he made his staff do it. David testified that he typically drove in a second car when he was with Diddy, as it protected him from threats. David said one of Diddy's assistants had to go to the hospital for dehydration after working for 24 hours straight. David also said that there was a common phrase amongst Diddy's security guards, and it was, "Do you know what rhymes with tired?" Fired. David said Diddy confronted him about an incident with one of Diddy's female chefs. David said during the incident he grabbed the female chef by the wrists and told her to stay in her lane. David said Diddy told him that he couldn't hit women and that he should buy the chef a gift. David also said that Diddy told him that Cassie was right where he wanted her, young and moldable. Again, I don't think Marc Agnifilo got anywhere with his cross-examination of David. Instead, I'd probably say that David's cross-examination actually helped the prosecution a little bit. David went on to say that Diddy wasn't gracious. David went on to say that Diddy said that Cassie was young and moldable. David just made some pretty damning statements during the cross-examination, and I don't think defense should feel proud of themselves for this one. After David's testimony concluded, the government called their 8th witness, Cassie's mom, Regina Ventura. AUSA Emily Johnson handled the direct examination on behalf of the government. Regina stated that in December 2011, Cassie emailed her stating that Diddy was threatening to release explicit sex tapes of her. Regina said Diddy called her around the same time and said he needed $20,000 to recoup money he had spent on Cassie. Regina said Diddy was upset because Cassie was dating Kid Cudi. Regina said she and her husband took a home equity loan to obtain the $20,000 for Diddy. Regina also stated about 4 or 5 days later, Diddy gave the money back to her. The direct examination of Regina here was absolutely flawless, like literally chef's kiss. It was great. It was succinct. It was to the point. Regina didn't have much to add other than the description of this incident. That was perfect. The prosecution called her at a perfect time. The prosecution got the little details that it needed out of her, and it let her carry on with her day. I thought calling Regina to the stand was a really smart move, and I think the prosecution did a good job here. In a surprising turn of events, after Regina was questioned by the government, Marc Agnifilo merely stood up on behalf of the defense team, thanked Regina for her time, and said he had no questions for her. I think this is one of the smartest decisions that Diddy's defense team has made so far. I think not cross-examining the victim's mother was a smart move. I think it shows the jurors that they are sympathetic regardless of the situation. I think Marc did a good job here, and I think just standing up and thanking her for her time was very sweet. It was charming. It comes across really well. After Regina was done testifying, the government called their 9th witness, a man by the name of Sharay Hayes. The direct examination of Sharay Hayes was done by AUSA Meredith Foster. Sharay testified that he's currently 51 years old, and he used to work as an exotic dancer under the stage name The Punisher. Sharay stated that he worked as The Punisher from 2012 to 2016. Sharay stated he met Diddy and Cassie at some point in fall of 2012. Sharay stated he got a call from Cassie claiming her name was Janet. Sharay further stated that Cassie stated it was her birthday, and her husband said she could hire an exotic dancer for the occasion. He stated he met Cassie and Diddy at the Trump International Hotel in New York City during their first meeting. He stated that when he went, Cassie greeted him at the door with a robe and a wig as he arrived. Sharay stated Cassie further explained to him that her husband wanted to create a sexy scene and would come in and watch the two. Sharay stated Cassie handed him $800 in cash and said he could change into underwear or a towel in the bathroom. Sharay stated that during the encounter, Diddy gave subtle instructions, and afterward Cassie handed him an additional $1,200 and thanked him. Sharay stated during the first encounter, he was unaware that the man was Diddy in the hotel, but on another occasion, he entered into a hotel room and saw a TV that displayed the message, "Welcome, Mr. Sean Combs." Sharay stated he was a fan of Diddy, he knew who he was, and he also followed him on social media at the time. Sharay stated after he saw the message on the TV, he recognized Cassie from photos of the couple together. Sharay stated he joined the couple for similar interactions about 8 to 12 times total. Sharay stated he never used drugs with Cassie and Diddy, nor did Diddy appear intoxicated during these interactions. I think calling Sharay as a witness was another good move. I think that Sharay merely corroborated everything that the first guy that we heard said. Remember Daniel Phillip? He said something similar, that Cassie greeted him at a hotel room with a wig on and a robe, and she pretty much didn't have anything under the robe. So hearing similar accounts from different participants is always good. The cross-examination of Sharay Hayes was done by Diddy's defense attorney, Xavier Donaldson. The cross-examination was relatively brief. Sharay stated that he didn't witness Diddy filming any of the encounters, nor did he ever witness Diddy being violent towards Cassie. Sharay also stated that Cassie didn't appear to be uncomfortable during these interactions. I think defense did a really good job with the cross-examination of Sharay Hayes. I think defense elicited the statements that it needed to elicit out of him, which were, she wasn't uncomfortable, I never witnessed him beat her, and I didn't see him record anything. Those were good statements that they got out of Sharay, and they did a really good job here. After Sharay's testimony concluded, the government called their 10th witness, HSI Special Agent Gerard Gannon. AUSA Madison Smyzer did the direct examination on behalf of the government. Agent Gannon stated he was the special agent in charge of the raid of Diddy's Miami home on March 25th of 2024. Agent Gannon described the home as well as the findings. HSI Agent Gannon explained agents found high heels, sex toys, baby oil, personal lubricant, and lingerie in the closet of Diddy's home. Agent Gannon also stated they found AR-15s in Diddy's closet as well. Agent Gannon's testimony spilled over into the 8th day of trial on Wednesday, May 21st of 2025. When Agent Gannon continued his testimony, jurors were able to see items that were recovered from Diddy's home. Agent Gannon further stated that there was a Gucci bag in Diddy's closet, and the bag contained an assortment of pills, white powder, a crystal-like substance, a plastic straw, a $100 bill, and other items. Agent Gannon testified that residue from the $100 bill tested positively for cocaine and ketamine. Agent Gannon testified that there were some other tablets that were found and tested positive for MDMA. Agent Gannon is what I would like to call a foundational witness. So my thoughts on his direct examination aren't really too plentiful. I think just generally speaking, he's a witness that you call to the stand to set the scene, right? You want this witness to introduce photos of the stuff that was recovered in Diddy's home. But I don't really think other than that, Agent Gannon offered much. But it was phenomenal for them to call him. This is the type of witness that you need. It's like a scene setter witness, but it's not someone that testifies to anything super crazy. The cross-examination of Agent Gannon was done by Diddy's defense attorney, Teny Geragos. During cross-examination, Teny just tried to discredit Agent Gannon's findings. I think that was not a smart move. The items were found in his home, ma'am, period. I don't even know why they tried to cross-examine this man. I think it wasn't smart. I think that they have made better decisions throughout the course of this trial, and I just don't think it got anywhere with the jurors. The prosecution then called their 11th witness to the stand, Dr. Don Hughes. Dr. Hughes' direct examination was handled by Mitzi Steiner on behalf of the government. Dr. Hughes is a board-certified clinical and forensic psychologist who testified about the cycle of domestic violence in relationships. Dr. Hughes mentioned that she was testifying as a blind expert, but she was going to provide the jury with information about domestic violence, rape, sexual assault, and traumatic stress. Just to explain it to you guys, a blind witness is someone who doesn't know anything about the facts of the case, meaning I'm going to come in, I'm going to testify about my expertise, but I didn't examine any of the parties involved in this case. I don't know anything about the case facts. I'm just going to tell you, generally speaking, about how DV relationships work. Dr. Hughes testified that she's getting paid $600 an hour and $6,000 for 1 day of her testimony. Dr. Hughes testified that it is very common for victims to stay in abusive relationships. Dr. Hughes clarified that it's about the power and control that the abuser has over the victim. Dr. Hughes stated that sexual abuse is a very private harm, and victims experience a tremendous amount of shame, humiliation, and degradation. Dr. Hughes said a victim's financial dependence on an abuser plays a very important role in their decision to stay in an abusive relationship. Dr. Hughes testified that a trauma bond can make a victim unwilling to leave. Dr. Hughes testified that it is not uncommon for victims to return to their partners. Dr. Hughes further described trying to work things out with an abusive partner as a coping mechanism. Dr. Hughes testified that victims often numb themselves with drugs and alcohol. Dr. Hughes said it is not uncommon for victims to minimize the domestic violence when finally telling their friends and family. Dr. Hughes is the witness that the jurors absolutely needed to hear from. I had seen too many comments about people saying, well, why would Cassie stay in a relationship with this man for 11 years if she was getting abused? And that just let me know that people really weren't sure about DV cycles and DV relationships. I think Dr. Hughes' testimony establishing that domestic violence is cyclical. Sometimes people just can't get out like that. It's not that easy. It's something that parties needed to hear from. And I think she did a phenomenal job as a blind expert. The cross-examination of Dr. Hughes was handled by Diddy's defense attorney, Johnathan Bach. Just a quick side note, when we were going through Diddy's list of attorneys in my first video, I didn't mention Johnathan Bach because I didn't know he was on Diddy's defense team, so I don't know at what point he entered. During cross-examination, Johnathan asked Dr. Hughes to confirm that she had no information about the case, nor did she ever examine Cassie herself. During cross-examination, Johnathan also got Dr. Hughes to testify that she's never testified as an expert on behalf of men. The cross-examination questions of Dr. Hughes were just typical. It wasn't anything super exciting. It was kind of underwhelming. Okay, we get it. She's a blind expert, but she told you that. Okay, we get it. She's never testified as an expert on behalf of men, but she goes to who hires her. I don't think it really made any headway, but I can't be sure. I'm not a juror in this case. I also don't think that there's much else they could have done because there's nothing really to attack her on. She's an expert witness. Trying to attack her credibility, sure, fine. But regardless, she's an expert in this field. Following Dr. Hughes' testimony, the government called their 12th witness, another former personal assistant of Diddy's, a man by the name of George Kaplan. George's direct examination was handled by AUSA Marine Comey. George said he would work anywhere between 80 and 100 hours per week. George said he started working at the Combs Enterprise in 2013 as an executive assistant to the chief operating officer, but 10 months later was promoted to Diddy's personal assistant. George said that Diddy communicated with him multiple times a day, requesting clothes, food, drugs, and liquor. George said Diddy threatened his job almost monthly. George said he would travel to hotel rooms to set them up for Diddy's arrival. George said the first time he traveled to a hotel room to set it up for Diddy's arrival, he was handed a bag and told to unpack it. George said the bag contained clothes, a speaker, candles, liquor, baby oil, and lubricant. George said after Diddy left the room, he would go in and clean up the place. George said Diddy gave him cash and a phone number to call to arrange drug pickups on 2 different occasions. George said during one occasion the drug to pick up was MDMA, and the second time he doesn't remember the drug that he picked up. George's testimony actually carried us into the 9th day of trial, which was Thursday, May 22nd of 2025. George said that one time on a private jet, Diddy asked him to hold $50,000. George said that on a couple other occasions, Diddy would ask him to get $10,000 in cash from Western Union. George confirmed that he received immunity to testify, but understands that he could still be prosecuted for lying on the stand. George said he witnessed Diddy be violent with Cassie on one occasion while on a private jet. George said he heard glass break, and when he looked back, he saw Diddy standing over Cassie with a whiskey rocks glass in his hand. George said on another occasion, in late 2015, he saw Cassie with injuries in Diddy's home. George said Cassie had visible bruising on her face, but he did not stop to check on her. George said he ultimately stopped working for Diddy due to his discomfort after observing Diddy's physical behavior. George said he once saw Diddy throw apples at another woman named Gina's head. Remember Gina? She's the person that Kerry and Cassie both testified had a relationship with Diddy that overlapped with Cassie's relationship with Diddy. I think George's testimony was absolutely necessary. I think George testified to much of what we already heard from other witnesses, but he also added a small bit of difference. George stated that he worked anywhere from 80 to 100 hours. And depending on how jurors want to look at it, I think that might be enough for the underlying predicate offense of forced labor. But let's see what exactly defense does as far as cross-examining George. The cross-examination of George Kaplan was handled by Diddy's defense attorney, Marc Agnifilo. During cross-examination, George testified that Diddy had an infectious energy, and he learned skills from Diddy that he still uses as a business person today. George testified that he has no ill will towards Diddy, and he still wishes him a happy birthday every single year. George testified that Diddy did not keep track of his expenses, but instead his staff did. George said he never saw Diddy with a gun. George said that he desperately did not want to be here today testifying. Okay, you guys, so it might sound like to you that I'm picking on Marc Agnifilo, but I'm not. Remember, I'm trying to give kudos where I think kudos are due. I gave kudos to Marc for not cross-examining Cassie's mother. I thought that was a phenomenal decision. But as far as the cross-examination of George here, I don't think it was effective. We all know that two things can be true at once. So the fact that Diddy has an infectious energy and he's a great businessman doesn't really negate the fact that he can also be an abusive person, right? So I don't really think that it really got anywhere. But let me know again if you guys disagree. After George's testimony, the prosecution called their 13th witness, Kid Cudi. AUSA Emily Johnson did the direct examination on behalf of the government. Kid Cudi testified that Kid Cudi is a stage name and his real name is Scott Ramon Seguro Mescudi, and he's a performer. Kid Cudi testified that he knew about the relationship between Diddy and Cassie, but he thought that they were having issues when he first started dating Cassie. Kid Cudi testified that Diddy's assistant told him by phone that Diddy and an associate were inside Kid Cudi's house. Kid Cudi stated when he returned to his home, he thought the outside appeared relatively normal, but he later learned that his security cameras were moved. Kid Cudi stated when he went inside the house, some gifts he bought for his family were opened, and his dog was locked inside the restroom. Kid Cudi said he then called Diddy because he wanted to confront and fight him, but then he thought about it and decided to call the police instead. Kid Cudi said he ignored Diddy's texts after the break-in. Kid Cudi said one morning in January of 2012, his dog watcher called him from his house to say that his Porsche was on fire. Jurors then saw photos of Kid Cudi's damaged car, and he said it happened because of a Molotov cocktail. Kid Cudi said law enforcement officers were called to the scene and found the Molotov cocktail in the driver's seat, and the car couldn't be saved. Kid Cudi said after the car fire, he reached out to Diddy. Kid Cudi and Diddy ultimately met, and Kid Cudi told Diddy about his relationship with Cassie. Kid Cudi said that Cassie told him Diddy and him were done, and she took his word for it. Kid Cudi said that Diddy's demeanor was calm and off-putting, and years later he apologized for the incident. Calling Kid Cudi to the stand was absolutely crucial. His name has been mentioned throughout this trial multiple times, and it was absolutely crucial that the jurors heard from him himself. I thought that this was a good strategic decision. I thought it was phenomenal that the jurors were able to see photos of his damaged car. I thought it was phenomenal that the jurors were able to hear from him directly that Diddy threatened him on multiple occasions. This was a phenomenal prosecution witness. The cross-examination of Kid Cudi was handled by Diddy's defense attorney, Brian Steele. During cross-examination, Kid Cudi testified that DNA was collected from his car, but he was unaware that the DNA came back to a woman. Kid Cudi testified that he stopped talking to Cassie after their relationship ended. Kid Cudi said that Cassie told Kid Cudi about Diddy being physically abusive towards her. Kid Cudi said he was played by Cassie, but he was in love with her. Multiple news outlets were talking about the damage they felt that Brian Steele did in cross-examining Kid Cudi, and I'm going to tell you that I absolutely agree. I think the fact that Brian Steele was able to elicit out of Kid Cudi that DNA testing was done to his car and the DNA came back to a woman was damaging for the prosecution's case in chief. Absolutely. I didn't even know that there was any DNA collected from the vehicle because the government didn't tell us during the direct. I think the fact that Steele went through and did this so viciously and so methodically, it actually did do damage. Although Cudi was a credible witness, I think that cross-examining him got the defense team pretty far. This was a phenomenal job. Just a random side note, because we're talking about Diddy's defense attorney, Brian Steele. I've heard from multiple media outlets that they feel like Diddy's Atlanta-based attorneys are doing a phenomenal job. Remember that Diddy's other Atlanta-based attorney, Nicole Westmoreland, was the one who cross-examined Don Richards, and that cross-examination was also super damaging. I actually am going to give it up to the Atlanta attorneys. I think that they're doing their big one here. They did a really good job, and they're doing that. They're really advocating for their client. After Kid Cudi was done testifying, the government called their 14th witness, a woman by the name of Mylah Morales. Mylah worked as a professional makeup artist for both Cassie and Diddy. Mylah's direct examination was handled by AUSA Maureen Comey. Mylah stated she worked with Diddy for 5 years, from 2000 to 2005. She testified that she stopped working with Diddy after she moved on to other clients, including Brianna, who she worked with for 13 years. Mylah stated Cassie was like a sister to her, and the two of them were really close. Mylah testified about an incident in 2010 where Diddy and Cassie got into an argument, and Cassie suffered a swollen eye, a busted lip, and knots on her head. Mylah stated she did not call the police because she was afraid of Diddy. Although you guys might disagree, I think that the government calling all of Diddy's former assistants, workmates, people who used to work for him, his staff, all of those people, is a good move. The government is trying to build up the fact that Diddy ran an enterprise, and the government is further trying to build up the fact that multiple people that worked with him for years on end were afraid of him. I think that this is just helping build their case even further. After direct examination, Diddy's defense attorney Anna Estevao handled Mylah Morales' cross-examination. On cross-examination, Mylah testified that she has done about 8 interviews discussing Diddy and Cassie's relationship within the past year. Mylah further testified that she wasn't paid to do any of those interviews. During cross-examination of Mylah, jurors also saw photos of Cassie in Wiz Khalifa's music video Black and Yellow. Mylah did Cassie's makeup for the music video, and the intent was to discredit Cassie because she previously stated that freak-offs took up most of her time and she couldn't pursue anything in the music industry. I actually don't think that Anna showing jurors photos of Cassie in Wiz Khalifa's music video actually discredits Cassie's testimony in the slightest. I think 2 things can be true at once, as I've told you guys numerous times before. The fact that Cassie was able to do a music video doesn't discredit the fact that freak-offs took up most of her time. Maybe she said that it took up all of her time and she couldn't work. Who cares? Most people don't speak in absolutes, right? So if I say someone called me 1,000,000 times, I don't mean that someone literally called me 1,000,000 times. It's up to the jurors not to leave their common sense at the door and to decipher what people mean through their testimony. And I don't think Anna made any headway here at all. Following Mylah's testimony, the government called their 15th witness, a man by the name of Frederick Seymour. Frederick is actually the general manager of a hotel in Beverly Hills called L'Hermitage. Despite really trying for you guys, I was unable to find which prosecutor led Frederick's direct examination. But through Frederick, the prosecutors were able to introduce multiple hotel records dating back to 2008. On the hotel records, there were multiple names, to include Sean Combs, Frank White, Frank Black, and Ryan Lopez. There were also notes in the system that stated that the person who stays in the room oftentimes damages it. The notes specifically stated that the person that stays in the room uses candle wax and gets candle wax on everything and uses excessive amounts of oil. It also notes to charge this guy an additional $1,000 as a security deposit because of all the excessive damage that's done to the room. And it lastly states that the room needed to absolutely be deep cleaned after the guest checks out. Frederick is another foundational witness. Through this witness, the government was able to get hotel records dating back to 2008 with different aliases on it. Also, through this witness, the government was able to establish that Diddy does trash hotel rooms, just like Cassie said. I think it was important for the jurors to hear from Frederick, but I also think it was really smart of the government to limit his testimony because other than that, there's not really much he can offer. There's no need to belabor any points, and to get him on the stand, testify to what he knows, testify about the hotel records and the excessive amounts of oil, and get him off was really smart. In another turn of events, defense didn't cross-examine Frederick either. You know how I said that defense not cross-examining Cassie's mother, Regina, was a smart strategic decision? I stand by that. But I don't know if this one was as smart. I think that there's a few questions that they could have asked Frederick just to kind of get up there and say some things. There were some other witnesses that the defense cross-examined that I felt like were absolutely unnecessary. Like, for example, when Teny got up there and cross-examined HSI agent Gannon about the stuff that was found in Diddy's home, I was just like, relax. None of this is really effective. So I think if they were willing to do that, they could have gotten up there and asked Frederick a few more questions. After Frederick was done testifying, the government called their 16th witness, a man by the name of Joshua Croft. AUSA Emily Johnson handled the direct examination on behalf of the government. Joshua is an HSI computer forensic agent. Joshua testified that he did an extraction on 3 of Cassie's laptops. Joshua testified that one laptop had to be factory reset, another laptop had a login screen with the user profile Frank Black, and the third laptop had some dents and bends but would not power on. Joshua filled in a very important hole for the prosecution, and that's exactly who was Frank Black. We heard this name being used as one of Diddy's aliases, but it was really important for the jurors to hear that that gap was filled in. The name Frank Black was registered as a user on one of Cassie's devices. That corroborates her testimony that Diddy would use different aliases when they booked these hotel rooms. I thought it was really important that the jurors got to hear from Joshua Croft, and he was another good witness that the prosecution called. On cross-examination, Teny Geragos was able to elicit out of Joshua that he did not do a detailed review of the data that he found on Cassie's devices. Unlike some of the cross-examination strategies that happened with some of the prior witnesses that I just completely disagreed with, I think this was a smart move. I think that Teny did a good job by getting Joshua to confess, like, listen, I examined some things, but not everything, because I think that kind of undermines his credibility in the eyes of the jurors. It's just like, why would you just look at certain things? Did someone ask you to only look at certain things? Are you not good at your job? Why wouldn't you look at everything? And I do think that that kind of got them a little bit of headway. After Joshua's testimony, the jurors were dismissed for the day. It's important to note that this is actually a holiday weekend, and on Friday, May 23rd, court wasn't in session. Monday, May 26th is Memorial Day, so court is going to resume on Tuesday, May 27th of 2025. When we catch up next week, we'll be discussing Diddy's 3rd full week of trial. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Until next time, y'all take care.